Hello, good evening. I'm Councillor Stephen Hodgson, and at the moment I am the Mayor, and I'd like to welcome everybody to the meeting. This is the public meeting, and members of the public and press are permitted to report on the proceedings. Reporting includes filming, photographing, making an audio recording, and providing commentary on the proceeding. Please note, this meeting is recorded and streamed live. These recordings are published on the relevant meeting page of the Council's website. By choosing to attend this public meeting, you are deemed to have given your consent to being filmed or recorded, and for any footage to be broadcast or published. If the alarm sounds, the premises must be evacuated immediately. Do not spend time collecting personal belongings. All emergency escape routes are clearly signed. Once you have left the building, the assembly point is in the High Street opposite the Guildhall. Members and other speakers are reminded to use their microphone when speaking. Before commencement of the formal business meeting of this council, my chaplain, the Reverend Diane Cookley, will offer prayers.
So can I just say good evening? It's really good to be here again. We're at the start of another year of council, and I always think it's just worth a moment to stop, to reflect on what has been, of all that has been achieved for the good of the people in this city, and to give thanks. It's always good to give thanks. So I actually want to have prayer of thanks this evening. And so we pray, gracious God, we give thanks for all those involved in the work of this City Council, for the officers and staff and councillors. We give thanks for Stephen in his role as Mayor this past year and his commitment to undertake various duties and engagements to represent this council. And we ask a blessing for the new Mayor in all that they will undertake in the year ahead. And as we gather this evening, we ask for wisdom and kindness in our approach to each other, that all we do will be for the good of the people of Worcester. Amen.
Thank you very much. Right, the first item of business is to appoint the Mayor for the municipal year 2022 to 23, and I will now ask for nominations. Yes, Councillor Denham.
I would like to nominate Adrian Gregson. Do you want me to speak to that?
Thank you very much. And do we have a seconder? Thank you. Thank you very much, Councillor Udall. I want to now ask, are there any further nominations? Okay, there aren't. Yeah, does Councillor Lynn Denham wish to make a speech in support of Councillor Gregson?
I most definitely do. It's a very important occasion. And it gives me enormous pleasure to propose Adrian Gregson as Mayor for the coming civic year. I asked him for his CV in order to ensure that I didn't miss anything or get anything wrong. And in true Adrian style, he sent me a list of ASG accuracy check facts. I won't share how old he is. I think that's inappropriate. And the fact that he owns an Alfa Romeo doesn't seem to me the most important quality for the role that I'm proposing him for. What strikes me is an absolute incredible record of achievement in Worcester, particularly for someone who grew up in Lancashire. So he's done incredibly well. And the first thing is Unison Branch Secretary in Worcestershire from 1992 to 2011. 19 years of fighting for workers' rights up at the County Council. Worcester Trades Union Council President for 6 years. And that is celebrated in the photo that is up in the courtroom, which I absolutely love. It is a dark-haired, rather younger Mr. Gregson, and I don't know whether it's unique for a trades union council president to become mayor. Adrian is the person who would know that, but I wasn't going to ask him to fact check that bit, but it is a considerable achievement. Adrian's worked in Worcestershire Record Office since 1987, and that service and the development of that service and being the county and the diocesan archivist and moving into the Hive building are very considerable professional achievements. And as part of his day job, he organised the Charter 400 celebrations for the city. And whilst doing all this and whilst being, leader of the Labour group, he also completed a PhD on the 7th Battalion King's Liverpool Regiment and Southport and Bootle in the Great War. He is an expert on the First World War, and again, as part of his day job, led the World War I centenary events and commemorations across the whole of the county. Adrian's been leader of our Labour group, and I think we were all a bit shocked to discover, for 20 years. We are incredibly grateful that he's steered us through every permutation of cabinet committee, minority groupings, in control, no overall control, and always had a long-term vision for Worcester, a vision for Worcester to become a great city. No one else knows the city's history better. No one else can make such superb off-the-cuff speeches. No one else understands the role of mayor as civic leader and in a historical context better than Adrian. He will be a fine addition to the historical line of leaders, and he will be an excellent mayor, and I hope others will support his nomination. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that. Councillor Udall, do you want anything in second?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor, and I'm pleased and honoured to be able to second the nomination for Adrian Gregson to be the next Mayor of Worcester. It wasn't until I was asked to undertake this nomination that I realised I've known Adrian since 1987, the year we both joined Worcester Labour Party, and the year he first came to work and live in Worcester, which means I suspect I'm the person who knows him the longest in this council chamber. And he will be probably as scared about that as I am. I remember meeting him for the first time at a friend's Christmas party. I remember a big, hairy man, and he claims to remember a young, callow youth. Nothing has changed over those 30 years. I also remember him as a Labour Party candidate in Claines. I think that was in 1991. A year later, he won a by-election in the then St Barnabas ward, now Rainbow Hill, and he joined us in the council chamber. He rose quickly through the ranks and became chair of the Museums and Art Galleries Committee, moving on to be chair of the Technical Services Committee. But most importantly, he became Labour Group Secretary and became the keeper or the archivist of Labour Group minutes and, unfortunately, our secrets. He is a Manchester United fan. Sorry about that. He once attended full council wearing a full Manchester United kit. I have to say that most of my Mancunian family are Manchester City fans, so it's one of the few differences of opinion between us. But over the years we have disagreed a few times. We've occasionally exchanged pleasantries over different issues, and it's never been personal. And frankly, anyone who happened to be Labour Group leader would always have a problem with me. But the strength of his character and the generosity of his spirit has always ensured that any differences of opinion is never personal, and for that I'm grateful. I admit it's not always easy to lead a political group, but Adrian does it well. He leads from the front, gathers his members and takes us with him. He leaves nobody behind, and he listens and he cares. We march towards the sound of gunfire, taking our message and our values forward. I was personally grateful for the help and support Adrian gave me when we erected the Poppy Memorial in Cripplegate Park. His help, advice and support was invaluable. We are both rugby fans. I discovered recently we both shared a secret desire to be scrum halves, but we always ended up as props. I can't think why. He was a much more successful player than me and played for Worcester Wanderers between 1987 and 1999, even going on tour to the United States and playing rugby in Worcester, Massachusetts. He's also, like me, a follower of Worcester Warriors at home and abroad. Wherever they play, Adrian will follow. He has watched and supported Warriors play in Russia, Italy, Spain, France and Ireland. Warriors will have a friend in Adrian, and rugby fans in the city will know that they have a mayor who shares their pain. I have a long list of organisations and events who are looking forward to welcoming Adrian over to St John's. He knows when he crosses the river to the bright side of the city, he will always find a welcome. He'll find St John's is happy to see him and will make him feel at home. Mr Mayor, I'm proud to second his nomination.
Thank you very much for that speech, and you forgot to add Russia to the list as well when we went to Moscow a few years ago. Now, I'm going to say my catchphrase for the very, very final time and say I'm going to move the vote and hand it over to Claire.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. All those in favour, please raise your hand. Against? Any abstentions? Thank you. The motion is carried.
I, Adrian Gregson, having been elected to the office of Mayor of Worcester City Council, declare that I take office upon myself and will duly and faithfully fulfil the duties of it according to the best of my judgment and ability. Thank you very much. Thank you.
The hooks on the back here.
No.
Well done.
Thank you. It's best to sit down. There we go. Good to go. Okay, thank you very much, Lynn. Thank you, Richard. Thank you to Council for your faith in me. Hi, Dad, who's watching somewhere at home. I'd like to announce that my mayoress for the year will be Rachel Hall. If Rachel would like to approach the dais to receive a badge.
Put my nose up. Thank you.
Let's just say the next item is.
Right, so now we're moving on to the vote of thanks to the retiring mayor, and if I can call on Councillor Bayliss.
Councillor
Mitchell.
Councillor Mitchell, Mr Mayor.
Sorry.
Thank you, Mr Mayor, and congratulations on your appointment. I've prepared a short speech for Stephen, so I'll just shake it out. No, it's not that long. It's the only piece of paper I could find. It never ceases to amaze me how anyone who has been a mayor copes with the duties of the mayoral responsibilities, as well as being a ward councillor, running their own lives, having their own job. It is a fantastically and unbelievably busy role, which is something I've been trying to avoid for a long time and will do for a long time in the future. But just to put it into context, put Stephen's mayoral responsibilities to one side, he also holds down a full-time job, is a Sunderland fan, which is a Worcester Warriors fan, much like our new mayor, and like our new mayor, has travelled the world to see them, and this year went to Parma, where while he was there watching the rugby, he also took time out to meet the mayor of Parma, Federico Pizzarotti, and I've probably pronounced that incorrectly. So he was doing business even while he was having his own time. On top of that, he's been a ward councillor and delivered some achievements for the ward, including a new play area in Brecon Avenue. And on top of that, been a parish councillor as well, which, if you put that to one side, he then has held the mayoral's responsibilities, which anyone who has ever witnessed the mayor is pretty much a 365 day a year job. But I'm going to highlight a few things. First of all, the charities which the mayor has supported. Aspies and a Stroke Association, two things which are very important to Stephen's heart, and we all know that his wife, who is the consort, had recently suffered from a stroke, and it's great to see that Stephen's been able to raise some money for that. I don't know the final number. I did ask Stephen, he doesn't know, but I'm sure it will be quite a lot. And the reason it's going to be quite a lot is because some of the events that Stephen had organised. The Mayor's Banquet, a tremendous evening in which he raised over £4,000 and gave an incredibly humorous speech. 3 additional events, which I should like to bring out: Lord Falconer's speech, the Algar Characol, and I had to check the pronunciation for that as well, and a Worcester concert in which, by chance, it was conducted by Chris Licence, a former councillor and mayor's consort himself. He then has all of his day-to-day duties where he has visited communities, individuals and organisations across the city. Regardless of what their involvement, he has been extremely busy. But I'd like to bring out 3 events which are quite close to my own heart, but that I'd like to highlight. The first is the tribute to Srebrenica that the mayor presented. Anyone who knows about the massacre of Srebrenica in 1995 in Bosnia-Herzegovina, it was awful, 8,000 people killed. I fortunately served there, the tour before and the tour after, so saw the build-up and the devastation afterwards. It was very moving. Very recently, he attended the 100th anniversary of the Worcestershire and Herefordshire Grenadier Guards Association. That sounds like a long time, except they're about 380 years old. But he attended, I was there myself, he sat with the Lord Lieutenant, he got around all the tables with his consort, and everyone was there, was really pleased to see him, and it was a very, very enjoyable afternoon. And then he's also attended the Veterans Breakfast Club. You'll note there's a theme here. As the Armed Forces champion, I've kept on that side, which I know. And having spoken to many of the vets, I was unable to attend myself. They all had a very enjoyable morning with him and thoroughly appreciated the time and effort he took to spend time with them. He even abstained from a beer, which is quite difficult in the Veterans Breakfast Club at 10 o'clock in the morning, but he did. But what else? It would be remiss of me to not mention the first 6 months of his tenure in which he was ably supported by Monty, their dog, or his dog, and unfortunately Monty passed away, but which we were very sad to see. But it was great to see him with Monty around. I mean, anyone who doesn't like a dog, well, who doesn't like a dog? And he always brought light in the event. But I'm also going to say, every mayor wants to leave a legacy. Not every mayor gets an opportunity to, for whatever reason. Let's hope that the legacy that Stephen has left is the effort where he's championed Worcester City's application for Lord Mayoral status, which our new mayor will hopefully be able to take up the mantle for. And that will be something that Stephen will always be able to say, I work for that, with the help of officers, understandably, but that's something he's championed. So, Stephen, I hope that hard work comes to fruition, and our new mayor, I hope you get the benefit of that. So, Stephen, you've had a tremendous year. You've been wonderfully supported by Lucy, your wife. The city has benefited from the effort that you have put into it, and I hope all of the residents appreciate it. I know members of this chamber do. So, I doff my cap, and well done.
Councillor Hodgson, would you like to step forward to receive your badge?
If you come up to the front, so you can just hand it over.
Okay, got it. Do you have your card, Steve? Do you have your card? So you can see. Oh, just put that down now. Forget it.
Stephen, you have the floor.
And then,
You'll be all right now, Stephen. You speak now, you should be fine.
okay, yes, I can see myself on there as well. Yes, I'm the first mayor who's ever had to master this technology when doing a reply speech. So every other year after this is going to be so much better. So yes, last year we were in this room. It was our first meeting just after COVID. And I remember we were all laid out in tables, of single tables, all laid back right to the very end. And the newly elected councillor, Karen Lawrence, she was sitting right to me, right at the back, and hopefully she could see way in the distance the mayor's table up here. And yes, I became mayor. And the first weeks, it was quite difficult in terms of engagement because obviously we had these strict COVID rules and that. But as the year went on, and in fact as the weeks went on, the amount of restrictions eased, and as mayor, and more importantly the city, could do more and more. And when you become mayor, you have to pick a theme. And I know the themes mayors have had over the years, but my theme, I decided, just stuck out for itself. Coming back together again and celebrating our great city. And I believe that is what we've actually done this year. So I'll now go through some of the highlights. First of all, the Three Choirs Festival. It was in doubt until relatively late. You might remember the issues about being able to rehearse for the Choral Society. But true enough, they managed to do it. And the week had a very, very tentative start. Normally with the three choirs, we have the civic parties from our other fellow three quiet cities, Herefordshire and Gloucestershire, and they couldn't bring along their usual civic partners, so it was just myself and Rob Mccarthy who walked up to the Guildhall, to the cathedral, and we had a quarter full cathedral for that opening service. But as the week went on, confidence grew, the audiences grew, and in the end it was like a normal Three Choirs festival at the end. And then not long after that, we had the Elgar Festival, which made a welcome return. And we heard a Migna variation being performed in the cathedral. And sure enough, because it was the anniversary of that particular piece of music, we also had it as part of the Three Choirs Festival as well. So to hear that twice performed in Worcester Cathedral this year was a real boom. And you can't not mistaken Worcester's big parade, those wonderful elephants that were around our city centre, and they charmed Worcester citizens and visitors. And if you count the auction as well, which was held in October, it raised over £400,000 for the St Richard's Hospice. And we also then had Worcester Festival. And again, the city came alive with performances. And then in the summer, we had the Battle of Worcester dinner, which was the 370th anniversary. And we had a gala dinner here from the Battle Society, and the guests were the Deputy Speaker of the House of Commons, Nigel Evans. I discovered Nigel Evans can drink red wine in bigger quantities and faster than I can, which is some achievement. And at the same time as well, we also had the Elsie and Norm performances in the commandery, and that was great as well, because that was one of the first times that people could actually come out and watch live theatre as well. So that was a really good thing as well. And who can forget the Archers Festivals, which we had over this last year? Who can remember those big inflatables outside the Guildhall and on the High Street, the light displays, and then in autumn that Light Night Festival in Worcester as well, in February. That was really, really good. And then we had the Worcester Show as well, which was the first time was held at Pitchcroft. We had glorious summer weather, and about 20,000 people turned up to that, and I had to present prizes to various categories for growing the biggest marrows, or having the best flower display, or whatever. And then we had the Victorian Christmas Fair again, and I had to go around and judge the various stalls and that was very enjoyable. Seeing the city centre once again packed again, and seeing coachloads of people coming from other parts of the country to enjoy what our city has to offer. And this year, Worcester has been nominated as the Queen's Green Canopy City, which is something, you know, really, really special. The Princess Royal came to open it earlier in the year and planted a tree at St Barnabas School. We've also planted an avenue tree along with Worcester's captain, Brett D'Oliveira, on Pitchcroft. And I planted a tree at Waitrose, a cherry tree with some pupils from the Nunnery Wood High School Eco Club. And hopefully soon the commemorative plaque will go on there. It's in a really good location. It's a prominent location as people go into the city and that. And again, it's a good way of marking that. Particularly Waitrose are also a corporate sponsor of that. And of course, I cannot fail to mention the Charter 400 celebration and the Civic Year. And of course, we've got the Herdman Bulls, which I was expecting to see out today, but they aren't here. Because normally they will sit here when we have our full council meetings, which is now a new tradition as well. And we've also had Perrywood School heavily involved. I went there and they drew pictures of me and that. And then on the 4th of October, on the balcony where you stand, for those of you who are elected, where you do your acceptance speech to your supporters, on that very bad balcony, the charter was actually read out and that. And then we then had a photograph of the past mayors, and of course we've lost 3 past years in this year: Jeff Carpenter, Clifford Lord and Aubrey Tarbuck, who will all be missed. And I would like to thank my successor as Mayor, Adrian Gregson, for the amount of work he did in terms of organising this particularly wonderful event. Now, in terms of my civic year, the civic banquet wasn't quite as inaugural as it was held in September due to COVID restrictions. But again, it was quite good to invite, the friends of the city and that to that banquet, and thank you very much for the work you've done for your communities around the city. And likewise, the city centre service was delayed until October. And again, that was a very memorable event. We had to delay it till then, because if we had it earlier, we wouldn't have been able to have any hymns where everybody could join in, and the numbers would have been limited. So that was really good. And again, we remembered the war dead with our Remembrance Sunday and our various events around the city, including the service in Gulliver Park. And as Councillor Mitch has already said, my Mayor's charity banquet held on the 29th of April has raised £4,000 for my mayoral charities, who I'll now go on to. ASPI is a self-help group for adults who have Asperger's syndrome, and it was founded by Sarah Micklewhite, who sadly died a few years ago, but her mother is keeping the charity very, very much alive. They had a challenge this year when their premises in Sampson Walk was no longer available to them, and had to find them alternative premises, and I'm pleased to say they're now in Beth Tilly House, and I'm looking forward to going to their open day and seeing their facilities there. I was also pleased in the summer to come to this room and see her being presented the British Empire Medal for the work she's actually done. I also like to mention the Stroke Association, and we met Bridget Stratton, who's involved in this. This is a national charity, but it helps stroke survivors in Worcester. My wife, the Mayoress Councillor Lucy Hodgson, she suffered a stroke shortly before I became Mayor, and they were absolutely fantastic in terms of helping her with her recovery and that. So I think that is a really good charity, and everybody knows somebody who's had a stroke, so I think that was a good one. In terms of a mayor, every past mayor likes to leave a legacy, and I have too. At the Platinum Jubilee this year, we're going to get various civic honours to various cities and towns, including a royal town, including a town becoming a city, plus also a city mayor becoming a Lord Mayor. Birmingham has a Lord Mayor, Coventry has a Lord Mayor, Bristol has a Lord Mayor. We've just celebrated 400 years of having a mayor. It's about time Worcester had a mayor as well. So I said to the council officers, Chief Executive, we need to get an application in for Worcester to have a Lord Mayor as well. We're competing with about 17 other cities, including our great rival Gloucester. Hopefully we will get it, and if we do get it, it'll be a fantastic honour for the city, and also a privilege for my successors to actually have. The next thing I'd like to have the next mayor to continue is the Christmas Day baby gift. Now, this is something that's very, very special to me, because if you don't know, my birthday is December the 25th. And I was the first born baby in Leeds in 1964. And I got presented with a cup and a spoon off the Mayor of Leeds. And I thought, well, if I ever become a mayor, I'm going to do that as well. So that is precisely what we did. And I was able to give the gift to Harriet Fionn Denton. And we gave her some nice embroidered baby clothes from an embroider who we gave a prize to at the stalls at the Worcester Victorian Fair 1 month previously. So the next thing I'm going to go on to is a list of the thanks, right? We've got various goodies here. The first 3 I haven't got goodies for, but I'll mention them. I'm going to mention Richard Faulkner for doing the Mayor's lecture on the Cotswold line and that, which was very interested and very well attended and helped to raise money for the charities I've just mentioned. I'd like to thank the Elgar Coracle, who performed a concert here in December just before Christmas. That was very, very well appreciated. and also to Worcester Concert Brass as well, which was conducted by a former mayor's consort of Worcester, Chris Lysons, and again that raised good money. So I believe Claire has got the list of the names, and we'll go through them and we'll hand out the various gifts.
Would you like to start off with your wife?
So the first person I'm going to thank is my mayoress and wife, Councillor Lucy Hodgson. So please come forward. As well as an envelope, you've also got a gift card as well. She would have got flowers, but we're going on holiday tomorrow, and she wouldn't be able to get the benefit of them because they'd be dead by the time we get back. So that's the first one.
Thank you.
Right, the second one
Chapman, who's here today.
is for Diane Cooksey, my mayor's chaplain. Yeah. So now I'm going to have two chaplains in front of me, yes. So here we are. And there we are now.
It's been a privilege. Thank you.
Yes. Should we do the crow chaplain as well?
Do you want to say something?
Yeah,
We'll
yeah,
keep them here.
yeah. Now, I also had two chaplains because my co-chaplain was Diane's curate, Rosie Moss. And again, she shared the duties with Diane, and again we got them flowers and a card for her as well. So I don't know whether Diane, you want to take them away with her and give them to her. That'd be absolutely great, yeah. And if she isn't around to get them, we could put them in the church, couldn't we, to replace those usual plastic flowers we have up. Okay, right, the next. Okay, the next gift is to my sword bearer, who's sword bearer for the last time tonight, Frank Southam. So if you can come forward, please, and receive his gift. Okay, thank you very much. I'm going to be my sword bearer. Right, the next award goes to Rob McCarthy, who has been absolutely brilliant in terms of helping me with procedures. For example, making sure I had my black rosette on my mayoral chain when I attended the memorial service of Jeff Carpenter. Also helped me look after the chain and really made sure that the parlour was in good order, and also made sure the civic party behaved themselves properly. So thank you very much indeed. So here you are. Here you are. And I know you like your port as well. So there you are.
Thank you very much.
Okay.
It's been a pleasure, Stephen.
Okay, thank you very much.
I'd like to say a few words about Jill.
I'll just mention
Even though
that
she's
she's
not
not
here. She's not here with us.
Now, unfortunately, she's not here tonight because she hasn't been well. I think, like many of us, we sort of get COVID eventually. So we've got a voucher and a card for her, and I'll hand that back over to Claire, and I'm sure she'll look forward to spending it when she gets back.
Jill. Julian and Margaret.
Okay, now the next one is a gift really for the admin staff at the Guildhall, who do such a fantastic job in making sure, you know, everything is in order, making sure our meetings run so well and that, and making sure that we don't have to spend ages printing up papers and that sort of thing.
Julian and Margaret. Julian and Margaret.
Yes, I'll invite Julian and Margaret to come up and accept this award on behalf of their staff. Okay. Thank you very much.
Guildhall Services. Guildhall Services. The facilities. Guildhall Services.
Yeah. Next one is to the Guildhall Services. So, again,
Joy, Rob,
we're going to give Joy,
and Lucy and Deb.
Joy, Lucy and Deb to come up and receive these. So,
Don't think we've got anybody here from the team, so I'll give that.
is
Yeah,
Joy-
give them a clap. Oh, we've got Rob. Rob can take it.
Okay then. Okay then. I'd especially like to thank Joy, who on her first day working for the council had to do something momentarily, and she looked after Monty on her first day of the job. So that was a nice thing to do on your first day of the job.
Say something to Sean.
The next thing I'd like to give a card to is to Sean, who I'll just hand behind her. Sean has been very good making sure that when I chair these meetings, they're in order and that what we do is legal and is constitutionally valid. And I'm sure she'll keep the next mayor in check as well.
Thank you very much.
Okay. And the next one, of course, goes to David Blake. Okay, David. I will just hand you over. Thank you very much.
And then just me.
And now, I'm going to give the next one to Claire Chapman. Claire again has absolutely been absolutely brilliant in terms of again making sure that what the mayor does is constitutionally correct, advise me on procedure, and when you become mayor, Claire gives you a load of bump about what you have to be mayor, and basically the golden rule is if you go to an event and if you're in doubt, you wear a lounge suit. So there you are, Claire. Thank you very much indeed. And just one thing I forgot to mention on my final speech about legacy. I've also asked as well if we could put as much effort into when we apply for various grants and things for this city, which we've been so successful for personal honours as well, such as BEMs and MBEs and that. I went to a few award ceremonies during the year, and very few Worcester people are actually getting them. So what I want to see is, more resources put into that particular area so our citizens can be rewarded in the right way for the work they do. But thank you very much. It's been a wonderful year, and I look forward to being back on the council on the ordinary benches and taking part in the debate and giving my 2 pennies worth. Thank you.
You just wait there then, Stephen.
Councillor Hodgson, would you like to come forward for your mayor's badge? Thank you very much. Okay, so if we'd like to move on with proceedings, the next item on the agenda is the election of Deputy Mayor.
Councillor Stephen wishes to speak.
Councillor Stephen.
As everyone is aware, the council is now in no overall control, and with no single party having enough councillors to control the council. In the light of this, we move that all the coming appointments of leader, appointments to committees, committee chairs and the Deputy Mayor are deferred until we've considered the constitutional motions put forward in the extraordinary meeting that follows this annual council. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Stephen. Is that seconded? Thank you. All those in favour of deferring that part of the meeting, or those parts of the meetings? Thank you. That looks unanimous. Right. In which case, we will move on to item 8, Mayor's Communications. And the first of those is to welcome all the newly elected councillors. I hope that you've got this far in the meeting and still wish to stay. Councillor Bashrat Ali, Councillor Steve Cockram, Councillor Zoe Cookson, Councillor Jill DeSera, Councillor Shafaz Ditta and Councillor Tom Pachowski. You are indeed welcome, and it gets a whole lot better than this. I've got a few announcements to make as Mayor. The first one is that I will not be having a Mayor's Chaplain this year. I am resurrecting the office of the City Orator, last used in 1575 on the visit of Elizabeth I, and my City Orator will be Ian Cragen. Thank you for agreeing to do that, Ian. The Mayor's charities this year will be Onside and Seven Arts. And drawing inspiration from my granddad's twin, who was Mayor of Glossop in the 1940s, was known as the musical Mayor. I've decided that my theme this year will be tackling mental health and well-being through a culture of creativity, art and music. There are a number of key events which you will need to be diarying. We are having a Jubilee lunch to celebrate the Platinum Jubilee on the 5th of June. Here there is the 100th anniversary of the opening of Gellivelt Park, or the naming of Gellivelt Park, which is to be on the 18th of June. On the 19th of June will be the civic service, and we have decided to follow the late inaugural banquet tradition and heading for the 23rd of September for the inaugural banquet, and of course Remembrance Sunday in the 13th of November. There will be undoubtedly many more occasions to meet up before then. I'd just like to pay tribute to Frank. Not many people get a standing ovation in this room, and there are very good reasons for that. Sorry, what I meant was there are very good reasons why Frank got a standing ovation. Frank was appointed the sword bearer in 1990, and the role itself goes back to the Charter of 1621, which you heard about earlier. In fact, if you want to see a painting of Frank when he first started as sword bearer, it's halfway down the stairs. And there's another more recent one that was done a couple of years ago, which is also available for seeing in the lower hall. He worked first for the council for 1968, having joined Worcester from Stoke-on-Trent, and was an electrician with the housing department. He was a full-time sword bearer from 1993, and of course during that time has celebrated many highlights, including the visit of the Queen in 2012, when Frank had to formally welcome Her Majesty at the gates with the hilt of his sword for her to touch to enter the city. To commemorate, the aforesaid portrait was, of course, commissioned by Francesca Curry, a renowned, well-known local artist, and that is hanging downstairs. There is going to be a separate celebration of Frank's work here, which hopefully we will be able to notify you of shortly. I also have the sad duty to report the death of Eric Carnell, who passed away on May the 14th, aged 95. Eric had been a mace bearer for the City Council and also was a Mayor's officer in 1997. Finally, I'd like to invite you to join in refreshments in the lower hall once the meetings are finished. What we're now going to do is to move on to the substantive part of this annual council, so I will ask if there are any declarations of interest. Can't see any raised, thank you. The minutes of the meeting of 29th of March 2022, are those an accurate record? Are there any issues we need to pick up from those? No, thank you. We've agreed to defer the appointments of the leader and the deputy leader, so item 13 is political balance on committees, and for that I think we need to refer to Appendix 1.
Yes, that's right. The report sets out the proposed political balance.
So if you've got that in front of you, agenda item 13, and the proposed political balance,
Set out in Appendix 1.
that was all been circulated previously.
Is it proposed in second?
I need a proposer to accept that. Councillor Bayliss.
I move that they be accepted, Mr Mayor.
Any seconders? Councillor Denham. And those in agreement with that, I'd like to show. Thank you. We cannot deal with the appointment of members to those committees and chairs and vice chairs until we have dealt with the constitutional issues in the next meeting. So then we move to the report of the returning officer. That is a report for noting. I ask that council notes that. And the report on the council's allowances for 21-22, again for noting. And the programme of meetings for your diaries. Noted? Good. Thank you very much. Then we will end the annual council meeting, and what I'm proposing to do is to move straight into the extraordinary council, if that's okay with everybody. If you just want to readjust your paperwork. And again, we need to start with the formalities. Are there any apologies for absence? And any declarations of interest? We've not been notified of any items of public participation, so there are none there. And we move straight to the notice of motion. You'll notice there are two notices of motion on the agenda. And we'd like to start just a point of clarification before we proceed. Motion that you'll see that there are two similar notices of motions, 1 and 2. In accordance with Part 4, Schedule 15 of the Constitution, if the first motion in its substantive format or as amended is carried, then the second motion will not be considered. Does everybody understand that? Good. Thank you. So we will move then to the first motion on the agenda, which I believe is proposed by Councillor Stephen.
Okay, thank you. Good evening. Our motion aims to do three things. It allows the two largest political groups to share the title of joint leader. It also allows for all of the committee chairs to be shared between the political parties in a politically balanced way. And it also changes the rules about the appointment of mayors and deputy mayors to allow the smaller parties to, in the future, have a chance to be the mayor and deputy mayor. I worry a little tonight that we will spend a lot of time discussing the intricacies of who is leader, who is deputy leader, who is a joint leader, which meetings they go to. And I fear this is a bit of a travesty, because discussing who goes to some external meetings, to me, is not a particularly good use of our time. The real issues that we face are the cost of living crisis, the climate and biodiversity emergencies. And really, how do we create a more sustainable city whilst at the same time tackling important issues like fuel poverty? We all know that in Westminster, there is generally quite a toxic environment of cynicism and a binary position where things are overtly party political rather than just being political. We should all be putting the best interests of Worcester residents first. We believe that real and lasting change comes from winning hearts and minds instead of one party or group getting their own way, and then the pendulum swings and the other party gets back in power and undoes all the work. We have a great constitution in this city where we have the committee system. Over many years, we have worked together very well, very constructively, as all political parties all working together. And together, we've seen record investment. We've seen the city plan being adopted, then revised it. We've had a number of years where we've had unanimous support for budgets. By the committee system, we have enabled the City Council to work together for the best interests. It hasn't always been easy, and often we've had to compromise. The City Council is one now which is, as I say, in no overall control, with the Conservatives on 15 and the Labour group on 12. Neither of the two largest parties are really anywhere near holding a majority, and so don't have the right to control the council in their own right. Having said that we have a really good committee system, we've always suffered from a thorny issue. And the thorny issue is that someone has to be leader and someone has to be deputy leader. And there does seem to be an element of, well, there's a status attached to those two things. But I think it's really important that we understand what the leader is responsible for and what they're not responsible for. The leader of this council does not have significant powers to make decisions. They have an influencing role, perhaps. They go to some external meetings. They do not make decisions. This council makes decisions. We make these decisions in this council chamber, and we also make decisions in our committees. There does seem to be a lot of angst out there at the moment about who should be the leader and who should be the deputy leader. For the Green Party, this matters not a great deal. We don't mind who is the leader. It matters not a lot to us. Tribalism, opposition, and opposition for opposition's sake is time-consuming and it is energy-sapping. But we do need to get the balance right. We still need to challenge and we still need to criticise to have good governance. We can't have everyone all agreeing the whole time, but we do need to have that balance in terms of governance. We must not slip into a toxic us and them Punch and Judy council. The only people who are going to lose in that situation are Worcester residents. Thank you.
Thank you. Would you like to turn your mic off, Councillor? I'm looking for a seconder to that motion. Councillor Bissett.
I formally second the motion and I reserve the right to speak later in the debate.
Okay, thank you. I've been notified of two speakers. We'll start with Councillor Mel Alcott.
Mayor, thank you. Oops, sorry, good start. To me, this motion, it is naive, I think it is divisive, and it shows no leadership whatsoever. It is here, this motion, it seeks to place two joint leaders in charge of the council, one from each of the largest political groups, one Conservative and one Labour. As I've said before, it does not take a rocket science to realise a party from the right and a party from the left are not going to work well together. I perceive the real reason behind this divisive motion is to keep the Conservatives in power. Knowing full well the numbers at council, the Conservatives and the Greens will support this motion, I anticipate, placing a Conservative leader in power. In 2018, history taught the residents of Baton Hall, vote Green, get Conservative. In 2022, the message remains the same, vote Green, get Conservative. With the motion banning a leader from the two smaller groups, Green and Liberal Democrat, it appears Councillor Louis Stephen, as group leader, is handing responsibility straight to the Conservatives, hiding away from any sense of responsibility or leadership, whilst at the same time unknowingly precluding myself and the Liberal Democrats from any. I think we need to think about our electorate, that they vote for a party, and they are not this naive. I think this motion is fundamentally flawed. I did look at putting in an amendment, because it is so fundamentally flawed, it was not possible to do so. It has been noted a second motion is on the paper, and I think it will be a real tragedy for democracy if it does not go forward. The second motion is sensible, it has a leader, a deputy leader, which is what the public expect. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Olcott. Councillor Denham.
Thank you, Chair, and congratulations on your elevation. The Constitution does need to be changed tonight in order to remove the Tory dictatorship that was imposed upon us at the beginning of last year. There are a number of things within the motion and the proposal that we accept. I think we support opening up mayorship and the access to deputy mayor to all parties, and we absolutely support proportional representation for chairs and vice chairs of committees. Democracy is about multi-party choice, and we absolutely fully support that. Labour candidates and activists worked really hard to achieve the position of no overall control for this council that we have today. We discussed joint leadership with the Green Party a while ago and have continued to discuss it. Co-leadership is okay if the leaders share a similar vision and values. Co-leaders within the Green Party nationally makes absolute sense. The Labour group is willing to share with the Greens or the Lib Dems, but not with the Conservative group. If you think you're voting for Caroline Lucas nationally, as somebody said to me, you don't expect to end up with Boris Johnson. I'm really surprised that the Greens are proposing this motion and submitted it actually whilst we thought we were still talking to them, and thus meaning that our motion, the Labour Party motion, is unlikely to be considered. How can 6 councillors force 12 Labour councillors into coalition with the Tories? Forced cooperation in terms of the Green Party's own statement. To me, that's a complete contradiction in terms. Labour has a long and proud history of representing working people. We had to fight for the vote for workers and for women. We've had to fight, the bosses had to fight capitalism in order to, the worst excesses of capitalism, in order to protect the exploitation of workers. Worcester the city requires a clear vision and leadership at this time. Labour's manifesto is our promise to our voters. 70% of the people who voted in the elections this year did not want Tory councillors. How can a leader represent the council with alternating leaders with profoundly different values? Not all politicians and political parties are the same. The Labour group will not be bullied into shared leadership with the Conservative councillors in this council.
Thank you, Councillor Denham. Councillor Bayliss.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. And can I begin by congratulating you on your appointment tonight as Mayor, and wish you and Rachel the very best for your year as Mayor and Mayoress representing this city. I hope and trust that you will follow in the best traditions of the mayoralty, where holders put aside party allegiance and govern and lead this council from the chair according to the Constitution, and I trust that you will do that. Turning now to the motion and to the comments that have just been made, I mean, anybody would think we haven't had this before. We've done this for every year for the last last five, apart from the last one where we won a majority. We've had a Labour leader and a Conservative deputy, or a Conservative leader and a Labour deputy for all of that period. This is nothing unusual or different. In fact, it's what our Constitution currently calls for. The amendment would make sure that both leaders of the largest parties were referred to as leader of the council, shared leader. Elections have consequences, and clearly we lost some seats in this election. I would point out to the leader of the Labour group, though, that the Conservatives still won the popular vote closely this year, but they won a popular vote this year and last year and the year before, and in fact every year that the members of this council were elected, they've won the popular vote. I think we have a proud history in Worcester of collaboration between the parties. We have a joint corporate plan which all four leaders signed up. I was very disappointed in what the leader of the Lib Dem group had to say, given that she has signed up to a joint plan that I felt was in good faith, that we were all, that's our strategic plan that was going to move this council forward. We have a budget that's been unanimously agreed for 3 years in a row. Nobody has not got what they wanted, obviously because we've all ultimately voted for the budget. I'd hoped that that was something that we could continue to do. We've had a shared mayoralty. Yourself, Mr Mayor, voted unanimously by this council, and all previous mayors for recent years. We have a committee system which has devolved power. We've gone away from the strong leader and cabinet model. We've embraced one where every member, all 35 of the members of this council, may make decisions in that. We've shared out all of the chairs and vice chairs. Even last year, where we had a majority, we still shared out all the vice chairs to the opposition groups. And in fact, we even made constitutional changes so that the leader of the Labour group at the time could be a vice chairman of a committee. Things have changed. We need to work even more closely together. There is no progressive alliance. I looked on the ballot paper. I've got a copy of the nominations here. There was no progressive alliance on the ballot paper. There were independent parties that competed. There was nothing in any election leaflet, in any media statements, on any ballot papers that talked about a progressive alliance. This only appeared after the election. Now, I hold out the hand of friendship and willingness to collaborate and cooperate with any member of this council to do the things that this council wants to do. Where I offer a broad and open partnership to all members, especially to the leader of the Labour group, because together we can make this council better. What we need to do, however, is recognise that we're not in charge. The people of Worcester are in charge. They've put us here to collaborate, to put their agenda forward. And that's what we have all a mandate to do. All 35 of us have won elections.
1 minute, Councillor.
Thank you. All 35 of us have a mandate to do that. And I call upon the council to recognise that, to put down the cudgels, forget about the petty politics and work together for the greater good. And that can be done through shared leadership.
Thank you. Councillor Riaz.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Can I congratulate you on your appointment to the office of Mayor? I know you'll do the office justice and treat it with the highest respect it deserves. And in acknowledging that, I would also thank our previous Mayor, Councillor Hodgson, for his great service to the city. And I would also welcome the new councillors to this chamber and wish them luck. Mr Mayor, I would like to speak against this motion. On the 5th of May this year, thousands of electors sent a clear message to this council when they voted the Green parties in the wards that they'd won, against a reactionary politics and the incompetence of the Conservatives. The Green Party has local candidates that are highly active and well liked in their local communities. Many of them I call friends. I have worked with them closely and I know their dedication. But let's look at the numbers, Mr. Mayor. Let's consider why the main reasons that the Green Party strategists from above are advising the local party to enforce this. These voted for Greens in huge numbers, inflicting a humiliating defeat on the Tories. Results in other parts of the city very nearly made for an even more miserable night for the Tories. The Tory leader seemingly abandoned his post. His exit from the count even made national news. Mr. Mayor, from across the political spectrum, people have contacted me, commented online to vote their disgust at what the Green Party is doing here tonight. As well as buying into the positive vision they were sold on the doorstep, Green voters voted for the Greens to help keep the Tories out. Why did they do that, Mr. Mayor? It's because of the industrial scale cronyism, the Tory party at the top, the catastrophic failure of Brexit, because of the billions of wasted on track and trace, the truly inhumane Rwanda plan, and the draconian new police bill eroding our freedoms and rights to speak up. It's because of the tax breaks for the super rich, the shocking rise in food bank use, the millions plunged into poverty of benefit cuts, and the failure to curb the cost of living crisis that is spiralling out of control. Despite all this, despite with the will of their own voters, the Green Party wants to prop up a Tory leadership. This shows us how out of touch they really are and how narrow their obsession with winning Tory wards really is. That, Mr. Mayor, is the core issue from the Green leadership. Having campaigned as an alternative to the Tories, they now abandon their own voters, trying not to upset Tory sensibilities. I feel that many Greens don't really believe in what they are proposing here tonight, but they have been silenced and are taking orders from above. They are acting against their own will in favour of a leadership that cares more about results than about real change or progress. I invite Green councillors to stand firm to the progressive values they campaigned for and reject the regressive politics and rampant incompetence that we see at a national level. Green colleagues in this chamber can do the right thing here tonight and vote against this, because if they truly believe in equality, in their most prized dream of proportional representation, and in giving smaller parties the power to influence, lead and change, then they should vote against this or amend it now. Mr. Mayor, 70% of the electorate did not vote for the Tories. The Green Party, which claims to dream of fair representation for political parties, cannot stand by and anoint Tory leadership of this council. If Green councillors choose this path, they will have to live with that for a very long time, Mr. Mayor, and I'll remind them of it at every opportunity. A vote tonight will be a vote for Boris Johnson.
Thank you, Councillor Riaz. Councillor Roberts.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I stand in respect for you and your position, and I wish you all the best for the coming year. I think this is a rather sad debate. We're told that the left and right can't work together. Well, I've managed to work with a previous speaker on the freedom ship for Basildodivera. I've managed to work with his colleague 2 seats down on issues to do with fireworks, and I hope to work with the colleague on his left to do with children's issues. The people of the city are bothered about certain issues. They're bothered about protecting green spaces. They're bothered about valuing law and order, and they're bothered about making sure that we care and bother about the most vulnerable in society. None of these come anywhere into party politics. We can work together on these, and to suggest that you can't do this, that you can't work together, is extremely sad. The elections are an adversarial, a period of adversity. There's no two ways about that. And council can be a lobbying for who's going to be the next parliamentary candidate. I mean, you get people fluffing out their feathers and seeing who is the best in class. Well, I can live with that as well. But to suggest that in the day-to-day working that we can't share common goals and objectives for the sake of the city is a terrible thought, to be frank, and not one that will be shared by the members of the public.
Councillor Lamb.
Microphone's not. There we go. Okay. So I cannot support this motion, and I urge Council to reject it because it would effectively leave the Tories in a position of leadership in this city. And it's interesting what one of the proposers said, actually, because we can have a debate about what the leader of the council actually does and their formal powers. But in some ways, the leader of the council is a symbol, or as Philip Larkin said, a blazon of the city. It's a symbol of leadership and what it stands for. And in the recent elections, the Tories have been rejected by the people of Worcester. They lost 3 seats and came very close to losing 2 more. And if there had been all-out elections of the sort we're going to move to moving forward, they would have suffered even more grievous losses in May. A large majority of votes have been cast for progressive left-of-centre parties, and a majority of the seats in this city are now held by Labour, the Greens and the Liberal Democrats. And something said by the leader of the council about the number of popular votes. We live in a representative democracy, not a direct democracy. And I don't remember in 2010 Liberal Conservative coalition being on the ballot paper either, but I didn't see the Conservatives rejecting that. Furthermore, as well as being rejected at the ballot box, the Conservatives also seem to be involved in a bitter civil internal war between themselves, which has been well sort of played out in the press and in the public. And I think the Conservatives simply do not have the mandate nor the unity to provide the leadership that this city wants and needs. On one hand, I can see where the Greens are coming from. Punch and Judy politics can alienate voters, and to share power and seek consensus can seem attractive. But consensus can also sometimes lead to indecision. It can lead to gridlock. And one of the fundamental things about politics is to govern is to choose, no matter how difficult those choices sometimes are. And sometimes you have to do what you think is right, and the voters can make their judgment. The Labour Party has got no issue with seeking agreement or sharing power, but what we will not accept is propping up a discredited Tory leadership. And I warn the Greens that they should not be used as useful fools by the Tories. Green and indeed Liberal Democrat voters, by and large, share many of the same values as Labour voters. We have a commitment and belief in social justice, a progressive and liberal outlook, and a belief in environmental sustainability. There is a lot that unites us. And in many seats, it is clear that Green, Labour and Liberal Democrat voters cast their votes tactically to keep the Tories out. And I wonder what the Green voters would think if they knew that their elected representatives were going to prop up a Tory leadership. And there is already anger about this in the community. And as has already been pointed out, we only have to look back to 2018, when a Green councillor defected to the Tories literally months after being elected. And there was understandable anger from voters, and it will be the same now if the Green Party puts the Tories back into office. Let us not forget that if we endorse the local Tory leadership, we are not only publicly and symbolically supporting a tired and rejected local leadership, but by extension the National Conservative Party. They are one and the same. During the local elections, we know that some Tories called themselves local Conservatives because they didn't want to be associated with the national policies being put forward. And, if we vote for a local Tory leadership, that we are by extension voting for a national Tory party which, in a desperate attempt to pander to its base, is scrapping the Human Rights Act, flogging off Channel 4, sending asylum seekers to Rwanda, restricting the right to protest while dithering about the cost of living crisis that was highlighted by the proposer of this very motion. I don't agree with those policies, and I do not believe that Green members, Liberal Democrat members or their voters agree too. I appeal to the Greens that it is not too late to withdraw or amend this constitutional change and join in a progressive traffic-like agreement to take our city forward.
Okay, so I've got 4 more speakers who've notified. If there's anybody else they want to wave now. I've got you.
Marjorie.
Yeah, we've got Marjorie already. Just read out the names you've got then.
Okay, so Marjorie Bishop is next. Sorry, Councillor Mitchell is next, then Marjorie Bishop. And then I've got James Stanley, Neil Lawrenson, Tom Petrosky and Robin Norfolk. I may swap those around if I feel like it. Councillor Mitchell.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I've already congratulated on you on your new post, so I won't redo that again, but I will stand out of respect. I'm going to keep it pretty brief. Lots of people to talk for a long time. This is not putting the Conservatives as the leader. Unless I've misread it, and I haven't, it is a joint leadership. So the leader will be of someone from the Labour group and someone from the Conservative group. I struggle to understand where the concern is because you're the leader as well. It seems just minute aberration that I can't be a leader with a Conservative. Well, as we've already heard before, we've worked jointly for the 4 out of the last 5 years, and even when we were in power, we shared many of the positions. So much so that we didn't have the deputy leader on the newly written corporate plan. We had the 4 group leaders. Quite within my right, I guess, to have argued and said, well, I'm the deputy leader, I want my picture on there. But we didn't, because I don't have an ego like that. It seems that there is an ego on the other side that has to be, well, let's just say, the ego has landed. So I'm really struggling. Let's be really clear, though. We are not voting for a Conservative leadership. It is a joint leadership. And we've heard lots of discussion about propping up the Conservatives. It's a joint leadership. If you don't understand that,
read it again.
Read it again. Thank you, Mark. You took the words right out of my mouth. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, just to be clear, I take no respect or disrespect whether you stand or sit. Some people find it easier to sit and it's better quality on the microphone. So if you wish to do that, please continue to do so. Secondly, can we just make sure that the debate is respectful? We're starting to err into other ways. Councillor Bissett.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and may I add my congratulations to you on your elevation to the role of Mayor. We are not bullies, and we are not naive, and we are not propping up the Conservatives. We are proposing that we have joint leaders, and the 2 leaders will be on exactly the same level and will share the role of leader. For example, going to meetings, sometimes one would go, sometimes the other would go. And we brought the motion in good faith to bring about balance and so that we can all get on with what we're here for. I'd like to also say that many residents of Worcester have said to us, and I'm sure you've heard this as well from residents, that party politics has no place in the town hall. We should leave that to the national government and get on with trying to agree. I know it's not easy. So governance is by committee and not by leaders. The leader is a figurehead position. The thing is, though, words are powerful and they're emotive. So we all think we know what a leader is, and we think being a leader is really important. But in the system that we have in Worcester, it isn't that important because governance is by committee. And having joint leaders doesn't imply any sort of coalition. As has been mentioned before, the leadership has been chaired before, with a leader from one party and a deputy from another, and it has worked well. And this arrangement is really quite similar, it's just more egalitarian. Having joint leaders is a fair solution. Residents expect us to get on with the job of governing the city, not getting embroiled in arguments. Now, I put down here that I should make a joke, but I'm afraid I haven't been able to think of any. So I'll just move on to my final point, which is about working with people that we struggle to work with. The people of Northern Ireland and South Africa have managed to do it in far, far more pressing circumstances than we have here. And we know, and I recognise that it's hard to cooperate with enemies, but sometimes it's the right thing. I urge you to support the motion.
Thank you. Councillor Stanley's next.
Mr Mayor, thank you, and my congratulations and best wishes for the year ahead. I was stunned into momentary silence by some of the comments that I heard earlier in the debate, and I'm still puzzled by it, because during my time on this council, I personally worked, and I know other colleagues have done the same, with, well, in my case, the leader and deputy leader of the Labour group in a very constructive and positive way. And I would hope that that would continue wherever we happen to serve and whatever committee we serve. And I know that in the Environment Committee, similar work has taken place in a spirit of collaboration and good sense, personally. Overall, I think our system works extremely well. I would urge everyone to actually delve into the detail of what is in this particular motion, cut through some of the obsessive nature of the leadership debate, and actually think about how we can move forward as a council to deliver on our priorities for the city of Worcester. There's an enormous amount we've got to do. There are challenging times ahead, and I do not think the people of this city will congratulate us if we spend too much more time on a debate about something that actually has worked before very, very well. Thank you.
Councillor Lawrenson.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Congratulations on a well overdue appointment. Just a quick speech in response to what's already been said. This motion is about joint leadership. There's nothing new this year. The committee system has been brilliant for this council. I've heard members from all parties say that it's meant that they've been more involved in decision making. When I joined in 2012 and it was a cabinet system, you had 6 or 7 councillors effectively running the city of Worcester. That was good for them, but not so good for the other 28 councillors who didn't have much of a say. So we've still got a committee system. This is about joint leadership. They are essentially figureheads. This is not a drastic change to how the council will run itself. I think the differences between the two biggest parties can be somewhat overstated. Neither of you will like me saying that, but I think that is the case. But both main parties, as the other parties, care about Worcester. That's why we're here. And it's tempting to get involved in the Punch and Judy show, sort of mini House of Commons. And I've been guilty of that since I was elected in 2012. I hold my hands up. But that's not why we're here. We're here for Worcester. I resent the phrase useful fools. I'm personally fed up of being patronised by the Labour Party, including by a former Member of Parliament for the city, vote Green, get Tory. I find it's an insult not just to the councillors sitting here, but also the many activists who've been door-knocking and leafleting on our behalf so that we can represent people. So I would urge you to take that comment back. It's deeply disrespectful to both us and our activists and the residents. They work hard, arguably harder than you lot, because we're smaller. So when we get elected, we really do deserve it, because we have to work harder. We haven't got the national profile that you guys have. And we work hard to get elected, and that's the point. We want to work for residents, and getting elected gives us that bigger platform to get things done. I've said that since 2009 when I was campaigning for the Greens. Interesting reference to Larkin. I did my dissertation on him at Cambridge University in 2003. I'd urge you not to reference Larkin, given that he was a rampant Tory. Please don't do that again, Councillor Lamb. I love his poetry, hate his politics. Vote for progressive parties. Yes, I get that, but there are still 15 Tories here. You can't take that away, And ultimately, if there's a contentious vote at full council, you've got 20 versus 15 potentially. So why have this alliance, rigid alliance, when if it comes to a nitty-gritty vote, they can be outnumbered? So, nothing's changing here. So it's a case-by-case basis. That's what we've been consistent with over the years. Finally, I've been here a decade, and I've been often reminded that this is a place for dealing with Worcester issues. And this motion is about working together for the benefit of Worcester. It's really not very controversial. I will deal with the flack via Twitter and the local press another time. Thank you for bearing with me. It was a bit longer than I anticipated, but I support. I think Councillor Stephen's given the best speech he's given since he got elected. I'm not just saying that because I'm sitting next to him. He can buy me a pint later. Might see you also in the pub. But I think he's done a great job of articulating the case for this motion, and I urge you to reject the opposition and vote for this motion, which is about Worcester, not party politics. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Lawrenson. Councillor Petrosky.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I must admit that as a new person, well, first of all, congratulations on your appointment. I'm slightly anxious and trying to overcome the sort of nagging feeling in my head, at the back of my head, sitting in front of the person who's chairing the meeting and looking like a historical figure from the European history. So I hope I'll get through this bit as quickly and as coherently as I can. I'd like to repeat what Councillor Lawrenson mentioned, because I think what Councillor Stephen was talking about was those values that Councillor Denham was seeking, that we have in common. I'd like to mention, as I was listening and making notes and being a newbie, trying to be polite and listen, I'd like to point out that people vote for things, not necessarily against things. Nobody warned me about water in this building. Is it something in the water that turns perfectly polite and well-mannered people into sort of quite cynical opponents? I don't think it's an edifying experience. It doesn't look well anywhere. In terms of voting green and getting whatever, I would like to reassure Councillor Olcott that people did vote green and they got what they voted for. In terms of forcing anybody, we are not forcing anybody. I would like to express my gratitude to Councillor Mitchell and to Councillor Hodgson because they mentioned Srebrenica. I would also like to express my gratitude to Councillor Rias for joining me on the trip to Bosnia, where we traced the tragic marks of division. Put the division behind you, put the values, which is the future and prosperity of people of this fine city that I decided to make home. I'm very happy for it. Put them first. We are not here to divide and rule. None of this divide et impera. I didn't go to Eton. I went to a socialist high school. That's why I picked up my Latin. We are here to unite and build. Unite and edificate. I would like to congratulate Councillor Stephen on his excellent speech and would wholeheartedly support his motion. Thank you.
Councillor Norfolk and then Councillor Agar will be my final speaker.
Press the right button. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Congratulations on your elevation. Every speaker thus far has praised the existing system, a leader, a deputy leader, and how well the committee systems work. I can't see why we would want to change that. I really can't see why we would want two leaders. I've read through the motion and read through the agenda items, the revised constitutions. But in part 19, or schedule 19 of the constitution, councillors' duties, there's a couple of pages dedicated to the council leader and the deputy leader and their duties and responsibilities. And amongst those are the political leadership of the council. I don't have any issue with any of these. They're all much of a muchness, but amongst those are the political leadership of the council, acting as a spokesperson for the council, and ensuring that questions that are asked to the leader and deputy leader of the council at council meetings are properly answered. Councillor Stephen, when proposing the motion, said that we don't need to talk about how these things are going to be managed. We don't need to care about the minutiae of how a co-leader will work with a co-leader. But I think we do. If we're talking about the political leadership of the council, we need agreement from the political leaders of the council. If we want somebody to act as a spokesperson for the council, we need agreement on what that spokesperson will say. And equally important, if we're going to talk to the leader and the deputy leader to ask them questions, if we're going to raise police crime and the sentencing bill, or whether or not Extinction Rebellion are right in blocking South Quay, who are we going to ask those questions of? Are we going to ask the questions of both co-leaders? Do we get to hear the question twice? Do we hear two supplementaries because both leaders have different answers? I've heard nothing, absolutely nothing, that will make me change my mind that the leader and a deputy leader should be elected by council and not foisted upon the council. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
And Councillor Agar.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and may I say congratulations on your elevation. I know that you will fulfil the role with dignity and fairness. With regard to the motion that we are discussing, it's been said a number of times this evening that elections have consequences. The people who elected us did not ask us for an alliance, and if the Greens do not understand the gulf between the two main parties, they have misunderstood us. On the doorstep, we heard routinely that people were extremely angry about so-called Partygate. They felt there was a lack of integrity at the national level of the Conservative Party and leadership. And we all know what happens when you form alliances at national level. You come to grief, and I think we would come to grief at local level as well. In committee, we have lively debates because we have this disparity of view. And I can't see us agreeing with the Conservatives about things like cost of living. I think that's been pretty clear that we could not agree on that crisis. And I am a bit concerned that a minority party, as much as I respect them, would appoint themselves kingmakers, because that's really what you've done. So actually, I will obviously be voting against this motion, and I'm very disappointed that it's been put.
Okay, I've come to the end of my list, so I'm going to ask if Councillor Stephen wishes the right of reply.
Yes, thank you. So first of all, I think the precedent has already been created when we had leaders and deputy leaders. We're now proposing that we have joint leaders to remove the status issue between leader and deputy leader. There is no difference in the operation between joint leaders and the operation of leader and deputy leader. I know from observing both Councillor Bayliss and Councillor Gregson during the time that they were leaders that they cooperated very well together. I know that they worked well and they cooperated about which meetings they were going to go to. And I heard them talking about things like, I'm on holiday next month, would you like to go to that meeting? And I'll go to the one after. That is the level of cooperation that they had. They worked together very well, and I want to thank both Councillor Adrian Gregson and Martin Bayliss for the maturity they had in that time when they worked together. Some people have raised an issue of, well, we're walking away from a progressive alliance. Well, let's face the facts. In this council, we have 20 councillors of Labour, Greens and Lib Dems. There is a big overlap in terms of our policy. And every single important decision that we make as this council, whether it be in council or committee, there is a baked-in majority for a progressive alliance. And we will not shy away from making difficult decisions, but we will make sure that we do not go into any sort of coalition. We will decide on a case-by-case basis on every single issue where we think it's best for the people of Worcester, and we are not going to go into any coalition. The last thing I'm going to say is that some people are trying to make a straw man of an argument here because they're saying that by having joint leaders, you have to have a joint programme, or that you have to have cooperation, or there's going to be some sort of coalition between Conservatives and Labour, and that you're going to have a combined some sort of programme that you agree on. That is completely ridiculous, and I think you know that. The fact is that we are talking about an administrative arrangement to go to a few meetings, and I think that we should be keeping that in mind when we vote. Thank you.
Thank you. So we're going to move to the vote on motion 1. Claire, do you want to just... Have we got 6? Yeah, looks like it. Thank you. Okay, so we'll have a name vote, and Claire Chapman will administer by name. Please make it clear which way you're voting when your name is called.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. When I call your name, could you please state if you are for, against or abstaining? Councillor Agar? Against. Councillor Ali? Against. Councillor Olcott?
Against.
Councillor Altaf? For. Councillor Amos? For. Councillor Barnes? Against. Councillor Bayliss?
For.
Councillor Bissett?
For.
Councillor Cleary?
For.
Councillor Cockerham?
For.
Councillor Cookson? Against. Councillor Cronin? Against. Councillor Denham?
Against.
Councillor De Serra?
Against.
Councillor Aladita? For. Councillor Shafas Ditter? For. Councillor Geraghty? For. Councillor Gregson?
Against.
Councillor Hassan? For. Councillor Mrs Lucy Hodgson? For. Councillor Stephen Hodgson?
For.
Councillor Lamb?
Against.
Councillor Lawrenson? For. Councillor Lawrence?
Against.
Councillor Lewing?
For.
Councillor McKay?
For.
Councillor Mitchell?
For.
Councillor Norfolk?
Against.
Councillor Petrosky?
For.
Councillor Riaz?
Against.
Councillor Roberts?
For.
Councillor Stafford?
For.
Councillor Stanley?
For.
Councillor Stephen?
For.
And Councillor Udall?
Against.
Thank you. The motion is carried.
Okay, thank you very much. Then we are going to return to the items which were deferred until that motion was debated. And the first item of those is the election of Deputy Mayor. I'd like to ask for nominations for Deputy Mayor. Councillor Petrosky.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'll propose Councillor Stephen.
Is that seconded? Thank you, Councillor Bissett. Are there any other nominations?
Do they wish to speak?
Councillor Petrosky, do you wish to speak?
Yes, and only very briefly. I didn't prepare a speech for this, and I'll put it this way. I think it's a privilege to speak about unity, and I think in terms of bringing people together, the office of the mayor of this great city serves this purpose very well. I consider Councillor Stephen a good friend of mine, but also in terms of showing the way that politics can be done, both here and hopefully on the national level. His views and views of many colleagues who sit near me, but also I think in this chamber, we all hope for greater unity. So in that respect, I would like to also point out the very simple fact that this talk about left and right, it doesn't really take into account something which is happening on the ground level, and that is voters in this city and many other great cities of this country voting for the future devoid of the cost of living crisis, future where we work together on coming with solutions against the climate emergency. So I think it's time a good time for this city to accept different shades of grey and goodness knows what else colours in between, rather than having this binary sort of track. So I'd like to recommend Councillor Stephen and hope that other political parties and views will be duly represented in time by holding this great office. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Bissett, do you wish to speak?
Yes, just briefly. I'd just like to point out that we've had Green councillors now for 10 years. So I think we've shown that, that we make, I hope you all agree that we make a good and valuable contribution to this council. And I think that after 10 years, it might possibly be time to have a Green mayor. Lots of other, if everything works out in the normal way. Quite a lot of other cities have had Green mayors, and they have performed their duties very well. I think Councillor Stephen would make an excellent mayor. He's very calm and considered, doesn't rush to judgments, and I think he can bring the city together. Thank you.
Thank you. Can I see a vote in favour of that nomination? Those in favour? Anyone against? Abstentions? That's new. Two. Thank you. Councillor Stephen, would you like to come and collect your chain of office and sign the declaration?
Read this out loud and then sign it, and then I'll countersign it. Just do the microphone for you.
I, Louis Stephen, having been elected to the office of Deputy Mayor of Worcester City Council, declare that I take office upon myself and will duly and faithfully fulfil the duties of it accordingly to the best of my judgment and ability.
Congratulations. Right, I'm now going to propose to move to the next item, which was deferred, and that is the appointment of Leader of the Council.
So we're going to take two nominations in accordance with the Constitution as just amended.
What the Constitution now says is that we have two nominations. So can I have first nomination, please? Councillor Mitchell.
Yeah, I'd like to propose Councillor Mark Bayliss.
Is that seconded?
I'd like to second that motion.
And any other nominations? No one other nominations? Okay. Then I think, although we now have a situation with co-leaders, we have one nomination for one of those posts. Can I see those in favour of that nomination, please? Thank you, that's 14.
15.
I'm sorry.
Lucy's not in the room.
It's 14, Councillor.
Mrs. Hodgson. She can,
Okay, thank you.
No, we can go. She's in.
Thank you.
15. We should take her vote. We can do a name vote, yeah.
You want a name vote, Stan? Other 6? Thank you. So we're going to rerun that vote for the benefit of Councillor Hodgson, it's going to be a named vote
To agree the nomination of Councillor Bayliss.
to agree the nomination for Councillor Bayliss as one of the co-leaders. Is that clear?
Yeah.
Everybody got that? Thank you. Okay, Claire?
Thank you, Mr Mayor. So when I call your name, can you please indicate if you're voting for, against or abstaining? Councillor Agar? Against. Councillor Ali? Against. Councillor Alcott?
Against.
Councillor Altaf? For. Councillor Amos? For. Councillor Barnes? Against. Councillor Bayliss? For. Councillor Bissett? Abstain. Councillor Cleary? For. Councillor Cockerham?
Abstain.
Councillor Cookson? Against. Councillor Cronin? Against. Councillor Denham?
Against.
Councillor Desara?
Against.
Councillor Aladitta? For. Councillor Shafaz-Ditta? For. Councillor Geraghty? For. Councillor Gregson?
Against.
Councillor Hassan? For. Councillor Mrs Lucy Hodgson? For. Councillor Stephen Hodgson?
For.
Councillor Lamb? Councillor Lawrenson? Councillor Lawrence? Councillor Lewing? Councillor Mackay? Councillor Mitchell?
For.
Councillor Norfolk?
Against.
Councillor Petrosky?
Abstain.
Councillor Riaz?
Against.
Councillor Roberts? Councillor Stafford? Councillor Stanley? Councillor Stephen?
Abstain.
Councillor Udall? Thank you.
That's carried, yes.
Thank you. The vote is carried.
So that we don't do anything else now?
No.
He's appointed. Yeah. So just confirm his appointment.
So we'll confirm the appointment as co-leader, Councillor Bayliss. Thank you. Congratulations. There's no need for an appointment for a deputy leader because the Constitution doesn't require one. And so the last item on the agenda refers to the appointment of members to committees and subcommittees.
Can you let them know that we're going to take it, then we're going to have a little comfort break and we want them to come back.
Okay.
Then we confirm the item.
So what we intend to do is to take this item and then we're going to let the officers check the balance and the names and so on. And we'll give you a short comfort break before coming back to confirm that, if that's okay. So how do you want to proceed through this? Just down the list.
Yeah.
So we've got the first batch. So we're looking at the policy committee.
Can I ask each of the group leaders to provide their nomination?
We're going to start, we'll start on the left-hand side and move across. So the names, please, Councillor Bayliss.
Will you be taking chairs and vice chair nominations at this point, Mr Mayor?
Yeah.
Okay. Policy and Resources. 6 members, Councillor Bayliss, Lucy Hodgson, Mackay, Mitchell, Stafford and Stanley, with Stanley being the vice chairman, or one of the vice chairmen on this committee.
Thank you. Councillor Denham.
Agar, Denham, Gregson and Riaz with Vice Chair Denham.
Councillor Stephen.
Bissett and Stephen, with Bissett being Chair of Policy and Resources.
Councillor Olcott.
Alcott only. Thanks.
Okay, communities. Councillor Bayliss.
Mr Mayor, 5 members. Councillor Cleary, Councillor Shafaz-Ditter, Councillor Mrs Hodgson, Councillor Mr Hodgson and Councillor Mackay, with Councillor Cleary as Vice Chairman.
Councillor Denham.
Ali, DeSera, Lamb and Riaz, with Riaz as chair.
Councillor Stephen.
2 people, Councillor Lawrenson, Councillor Petrosky.
No Liberal Democrat on that one. So we move to environment. Councillor Bayliss.
5 members. Councillor Altaf, Councillor Cleary, Councillor Hassan, Councillor Roberts, Councillor Stafford, with Councillor Stafford as chairman.
Councillor Denham.
Councillors Cookson, Cronin, Norfolk and Udall.
Councillor Stephen.
Councillor Bissett, Councillor Lewing, with Councillor Lewing being Vice Chairman, Chairperson.
Competing outside, health and wellbeing. Councillor Bayliss.
4 nominees. Councillor Shafaz-Ditter, Councillor Mrs Hodgson, Councillor Mr Hodgson and Councillor Stanley.
Health and wellbeing. Councillor Denham.
Councillors Ali, Denham, Norfolk and Udall, with Denham as chair.
And Councillor Stephen.
Councillor Cochrane, Councillor Petrosky.
Did you get which ones? Yeah, that's all right. Sorry, Councillor Alcott.
And Councillor Lawrence.
Thank you. I've got ahead of myself.
Apologies, Mr Mayor, I should have said Councillor Stephen Hodgson as Vice Chairman nominee on that committee.
Okay, so that's health and wellbeing. So now we're moving on to place and economic development. Councillor Bayliss.
Councillor Bayliss, Councillor Aladitter, Councillor Geraghty, Councillor Mrs Hodgson, Councillor Stanley, with Councillor Mrs Hodgson as chair.
Councillor Denham.
Bit of competition for sound out there. Right, nominations for place and economic development. Councillors Cronin, DeSera, Gregson and Norfolk, with Norfolk as vice chair.
Councillor Stephen.
Councillor Lawrenson, Councillor Lewing.
Income Generation Subcommittee. Councillor Bayliss.
Councillor Mackay and Councillor Mitchell, with Councillor Mackay as Vice Chairman.
Councillor Denham.
Councillor DeSera and Councillor Riaz, with Riaz as chair.
And we've got Councillor Stephen.
Yep, Councillor Stephen.
Thank you. And Personnel and General Purposes, Councillor Bayliss.
Councillors Bayliss, Stanley and Mitchell, with Councillor Stanley as chair.
Councillor Denham.
Councillors Cookson, Denham and Riaz, with Denham as vice chair.
And Councillor Stephen.
Councillor Bissett.
Oh, sorry.
Councillor Bissett.
Thank you. Not long to go. Planning Committee. Councillor Bayliss.
There are 5 members. Councillors Amos, Cleary, Shafaz-Ditter, Mitchell and Roberts, with Councillor Mitchell as chair.
Councillor Denham.
Councillors Agar, Barnes and DeSera, with Agar as vice chair.
Councillor Stephen.
Councillor Bissett and Councillor Lewing.
Councillor Alcott.
Councillor Alcott.
Licensing and Environmental Health, Councillor Bayliss.
4 members, Councillor Mrs Hodgson, Councillor Mr Hodgson, Councillor Mitchell and Councillor Stafford.
Councillor Denham.
Councillors Agar, Barnes, Cronin and Udall, with Udall as chair.
And Councillor Stephen.
Councillor Cochrane, Councillor Stephen being deputy chair.
Sorry? Vice chair. And Councillor Olcott.
Councillor Lawrence.
Audit and Governance, Councillor Bayliss.
Councillor Amos, Councillor Bayliss and Councillor Mackay, with Councillor Amos as chair.
Councillor Denham.
Councillor Barnes and Lamb, with Barnes as vice chair.
Councillor Stephen.
Councillor Petrowski.
Councillor Olcott.
Councillor Lawrence.
Standards, Councillor Bayliss.
Councillor Amos, Councillor Roberts and Councillor Stanley, with Councillor Roberts as vice chair.
Councillor Denham.
Councillors De Serra and Lamb.
Councillor Stephen.
Councillor Lawrence.
Lawrenson. Councillor Olcott.
And Councillor Olcott, with Councillor Olcott as chair.
Thank you. We then are listed with the 3 other appointments, which we're looking for 2 appointments to the Joint Museums Committee. Who are the nominations for that? Joint Museums.
Joint Museums, Councillor Mrs Hodgson.
And Councillor Agar.
Oh, others? Okay. And we want 2 for the WRS Board, Regulatory Services. What names?
Councillor Mitchell.
Councillor Denham.
And Councillor Cronin, which is a change from previously sent into committee.
No others listed? No. And the Joint Consultative Committee, we need 4 names on that.
Councillor Mrs Hodgson and Councillor Mitchell.
Councillor Denham.
Councillor Cookson and Councillor Denham.
And I take it that means there's no other names on that.
Mr Mayor, I made a slight error there. It should be, instead of Councillor Mitchell, it should be Councillor Bayliss.
Bayliss, on the JCSE.
I'm unfamiliar with him, sir.
Self-preservation from the...
Okay.
We don't need an adjournment. If you could just let them, we're just down with this for 20 seconds. We don't need an
So if you can just talk amongst yourselves briefly, but don't put your mics on if you're going to do that. We look as though we can come to a conclusion very quickly, so no need to go anywhere.
Yeah.
You can listen to me rattle on if you want. The proposal is that we take the full names which have been submitted and the chairs and vice chairs appointments that have been submitted on block. There don't seem to have been any disagreements with that, and all the names fit in the right boxes that we expect. So is everyone in favour in taking that as an item now?
Yeah.
Yeah?
All those in favour?
Thank you very much. All in favour? Good. I think we've done. We've done. Very good. Thank you very much. If you would like to join me for refreshments down in the lower hall, please do so. If not, have a safe journey home.